We were singing that song. I began to wonder how many of us really do want to hear what Jesus is saying to us. It's great the songs we can sing, but do we really want him to whisper into our ears? Do we really want him to speak to us? It's nice to sing about it. And I began to think about the woman who was caught in the act of adultery and how that the religious, those who thought they were better than her, brought her to the feet of Jesus. And because of the religious law, somebody made a comment the other day on the radio, and I wish I had a brick and I wish I could have thrown it through the radio to get to where they were, because the comment that they made was that every conflict in the world is all based on religion, and it's absolute total bunkum. It's nonsense. Religion is behind some of it, but it's mostly down to territory. Even here in Northern Ireland, we're not fighting over religion. We're not fighting because someone's a Protestant Catholic. That may well come into it, but we're fighting over territory. And religion can just get in the way and make us think we're just better than others. And so the religious people, they wanted this woman dealt with. And where I'm going with this in this moment is because when I bring this message to you, I want you to hear what God is saying to you. Because we're singing Whisper in My Ear. Do we really want to hear? And you get back to that story of the woman caught in the act of adultery, and the religious just wanted her stoned. It's what the law said. You know, it was a legal thing. Some people say, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing illegal. Just because it's not illegal doesn't mean that it's not wrong. And here were these men, they were wanting this woman stoned. And even most of us as Christians, we remember what Jesus said to those who stood there at the time. Because it suits us, we remember, let him who has no sin cast the first stone. We remember that. How often have we quoted that? But what about remember what he said to the woman? Go and sin no more. You want to hear the other bit, but not so much that bit, because the bit that applies to us is a wee bit more challenging, a bit more difficult. The title of the message this morning is Hope for the Hurting. And I do want to encourage you to get out on Monday night and Tuesday night if you can. David Curry, who's been here a few times, and he's had standing ovations in this place, he's going to be one of the main guys, main singers, and even for David Curry alone, it's going to be worth getting out. But this is to support hurting people. So if you can get out on Monday night and on Tuesday night. Hope for the hurting. In some way, maybe this message is going to be wasted, going to be lost on us. Because we're new lifers. We're Shankill people. We're Christians. We're not hurting. No one's hurting. And so when it comes to a message like this, hope for the hurting, then maybe this is for someone else. Maybe this is not so much for us. Because as Christians, we should not be experiencing pain. We should not be experiencing hurt. And some people tend to live above the clouds. It's like everything is perfect over here, up here. And if you're experiencing all the stuff and all the hurt that's going on in life, well, maybe you're the one that's not walking right with God. Maybe you're the one that's the problem. Maybe you're the one that doesn't have the faith that I have. And that sometimes is the attitude, and we want to suggest that those that are really truly following Jesus should not be hurting. When again, that is not what the Bible teaches. Let's not go just down the rabbit hole of always thinking about the stuff that makes us feel comfortable or sounds good as a Christian. We got to face reality at times. And sometimes reality is not pleasant to look at. Hope for the hurting. Even Paul the Apostle in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 8, Paul wrote these words. Now I want you to remember who this guy is. This is one of the greatest Christians that ever walked upon the face of this earth. This is one of the greatest apostles of the early church and the church history in itself. And yet this is what he wrote. He said, we, and included himself, are hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. We're persecuted, but we're not abandoned. We are struck down, but we are not destroyed. And if you focus in on the hard-pressed, perplexed, persecuted, struck down comments, then you would think that Paul was having a real good moan here. A good old rant, that's what he was having. Some people just do that on Facebook, a good old rant, and you think that's what Paul is doing here in writing these particular words, but he wasn't. He wasn't having a rant. He was simply writing about and expressing the reality of what was happening in his life and the life of those who were with him at that time. He was simply saying, this is what's happening. He was simply saying, this is how it is. This is what's going on. And friends, sometimes we just got to tell it as it is. Sometimes we got to speak the reality of the circumstances without declaring them and embracing them and speaking over us. But we got to tell it as it is. But hopefully we do so in the same way, in the same attitude that Paul talked about his circumstances. We're hard pressed, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. We're persecuted, but we're not abandoned. We're struck down, but we're not destroyed. And what this shows, as far as I'm concerned, is in the midst of everything that we go through as Christians, in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our suffering, that there is always hope, and that there's always hope for the hurting. And that's all of us in this place. I don't believe that there's a single person in this room who can exclude yourself from this message, who can exclude yourself from the need to hear this word today. That's all of us. We all experience hurt. Some of you are old enough to remember the REM song back in the day. Everybody hurts sometime. We all hurt at times, every single one of us. And if you look across this room, you'd see very clearly that we're all different. Right now, those at the back, you look out, you pan to the left, you pan to the right, you see the people in front. And when we're meeting each other, you come, you greet each other. We know that we are all different. We're different in how we look. We're different in how we dress. We're different in our sizes. We're different in our shapes. We're different in our hairstyles, although some have no hairstyle. Some just have head. We understand that. But we all look different. We all look different. And yet the fact of the matter is we're all the same. We may look different, but we're all the same. We all have dreams. We all have ambitions. We all want to achieve something worthwhile in life. We all want to do well in life. We all want to belong. We want to know that we're not isolated. We want to know that we're not alone. We want to belong to someone, to a group of people, even to a church. We want to be alone. We want to belong somewhere. But we also know what it's like to get hungry, every one of us. Not saying that every one of us gets to a place where you're literally starving for food. Some people say that, but they don't really understand what starving really is. But we all get hungry. We all get thirsty. We all get tired. We all feel pain. We all hurt. Because everybody hurts sometime. And maybe some of you in this room this morning, maybe this is your time. Maybe not just so much this morning, but over recent days and recent weeks and even months. This is your time when it comes to hurt. Because you can be sure that in a crowd this size, there are people who are hurting. There are hurting people. You can be sure that in this place right now, there are people who are wounded. There are people who are experiencing pain for one reason or another. And if it's not you at this moment in time, maybe you've had your moment and maybe there'll be another moment at some other point in your life. But you can be sure that people around you are hurting. Maybe the person in front of you. Maybe the person beside you. It could even be your wife, your husband, someone alongside you could be hurting. Maybe the person sitting in front of you or the person directly behind you. But we can be sure that there are people in this place right now who are hurting, and that never, ever changes. people are hurting. One thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that we do not add to the pain and the hurt of others. We recognize that it's there, as Paul did. We recognize that it's there. This is how it is. This is what people are going through. This is what we're going through. But in recognizing that, we need to make sure that we're not adding to the hurt of others by what we say or by what we do. Jesus gives some advice. You want to hear what Jesus says? We'll sing about it. Jesus whispered in my ear, tell me things I thought I'd never hear. So what advice did Jesus give? In order to ensure that we don't add to the hurts and the pains of others. And this is what he said. He said, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. In other words, treat others the way you would like them to treat you. If there's something you would not like someone doing with you, then don't you do it with them. If there's a situation that you would not like yourself to be in, then don't put someone else in that situation. Jesus says, do to others what you would have them do to you. Treat them the way you would like them to treat you. They're not my words, they're his words. You sang you wanted to hear them today. Some are carrying hurts that are quite fresh. Some have gone through a recent breakup, and that can be tough. Some have gone through the loss of a very special person, and we've witnessed that several times from the start of this year. We've had some amazing times in this church from we started it in 1993, but this year has been an absolutely incredible year in terms of what God has been doing among us. But yet in the midst of it, people are still experiencing hurt. And some have lost very precious and special loved ones. Some of you are facing situations that are beyond your control, your family circumstances, your children, those that you wish you could take their place and go through what they're going through. Or maybe make their mind up for them, maybe make the choice for them, but you know you cannot do it. You wish you could, and you're going through those situations that are beyond your control. Some people carry hurts that go back a long, long way, perhaps even years. But what do hurt people do? What do people who are hurt do? I'll tell you what to do. Most put on a mask. And we can become quite proficient at that. We know how to put the mask on. Even in church, we learn how to hide our hurts and our pain. And we can do so quite well because we want to protect ourselves, and we want to protect ourselves from further hurt, from it being added to. And that's what people do even when they come to church. And then, of course, you've heard it said that hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And it's not that they want to, it's that they're under so much pressure that sometimes they hit out when someone adds to the pressure. Someone's gone through so much pain, I don't need this. And so we respond and we react to it. And I've done that many a time. I know how to do that. Hurt people hurt people. We respond under pressure. We react under pressure. And so what we need to do is to not only say, there go I, but for the grace of God. Again, something that we could quite readily and easily and always want to quote when you look at what people are going through, there go I, but for the grace of God. But we need to see ourselves in others as Jesus did. Not just hear what he said about them, and not just hear from him how we should be responding and reacting to each other, but we also need to see others the way Jesus did. Now, how did Jesus look at others? He saw himself in others. He saw himself in those who were hungry. He saw himself in the homeless. He saw himself in those who were thirsty. He saw himself in those who were broken. He didn't just see them as individuals going through hard times, rough times, but he saw himself in them. That's why Jesus said in Matthew 25 and verse 35, these are verses that are well known to many of us. He says, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. I'm not going to expand these verses at all, but just to make the point that those who were righteous, religious, wasn't just the disciples, that they made a response and they said, Lord, when did we see you like this? And Jesus says, for as much as you did it to one of these, you did it unto me. He saw himself and those who were in those situations. And the point that I want to make is that Jesus saw himself in others. He put himself in their shoes. Again, one of the most famous comments on Facebook is, don't talk about someone until you've walked in their shoes. Don't talk about me, and this is what people say, don't talk about me until you walk in my shoes. And this is what Jesus did. Jesus put himself in the shoes of others. He sat where they sat. He stood where they stood. And so when Jesus said, treat others the way you would like them to treat you, he was saying, see yourself in those others. See yourself in them. They're human just like you. The feelings just like you have feelings. See yourself in them. But we also need not only to see ourselves in others, but we need to see God in others. We need to see God in each other. You know, my Bible tells me that we were created in the image and the likeness of God. We were created, not just a few, not just Adam and Eve, but we were created in the image and the likeness of God. Not just New Lifers, not just people over in Living Hope, not just those in the Shankle, people in the Falls Road, Shankle Road, people in Belfast and Birmingham, and right across this planet. We were created in the image and the likeness of God. Now, of course, we have messed that up. We understand it. We have messed that up. We've messed up his image in our lives. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we were and are created in his image and in his likeness. We're living in a generation now when the image and the likeness of God has been so eroded that it's so much more difficult to find these days. But it doesn't take away from the reality that we were and are created in the image and the likeness of God. So that every child that has been knit together in its mother's womb, every child that is mated through the womb, through the journey of the womb, and it's such a journey for millions of babies these days. Not going to go into that, but you know what I'm talking about. But every child that is mated through the womb and makes it to the point of birth, that child is made in the image and the likeness of God. And that child is born with a promise, with the promises of God, because God has purposed something for the life of every child, and God has promised something for every life that makes it onto planet Earth. This is what God says. He says, I know the plans I have for you. We're going to be dedicating a couple of children later on, and not too long now. But he says, I know the plans I have for you. God has plans for these children. God has plans for every child in the womb and every child that has been born. He says those are plans to prosper you, not to harm you. God doesn't want to harm any one of us. He wants to prosper us. He says they're plans to give you hope and a future. And that's what God speaks over every life, every child in the womb, every child that's been born, his purpose and his plans for us as humans. And yet, even though that's the case, even though we know that God has got some incredible things in store for us, and some of us find those in life, and we thank God that he does take up those broken pieces and he does put us back together, and that as we continue to follow Jesus Christ, that he leads us along a path where we discover stuff and we experience things that we never thought possible. And God fulfills his purpose and his plans through us and in us as we follow him And as we look to him every day of our life, in every situation, every circumstance of life, he fulfills those purposes and those plans. And yet, even though that's the case, we know that the reality is that everybody hurts. And we all hurt sometime. And some people are hurting right now. You see, life in reality is no picnic, not even for Christians. Some people may well think that they're having a picnic at the edge of hell, just enjoying themselves while everyone else is going to hell. I'd rather that we're a rescue, and I'm thinking of, some of you might remember it, it's hitting my head at the minute. Rather be a rescue station at the entrance of hell rather than having a picnic there. That's why God has placed us here, so that we could rescue people in life and for eternity. But the reality is that life is no picnic, not even for Christians. We all hurt. And when we hurt and when we experience pain, does Jesus understand? Does he really understand when we pray and we bring these needs to the Lord? Does he really fully understand? We're praying for Matthew and for his family. We're praying for Keith. There are other people in this place, and you're going through situations and circumstances that you wish to God you never were, and you're praying to God every day that he would take it away. And you wonder, does God really understand? Does Jesus really understand? And friends, the Bible tells us that Jesus is touched. He's moved with the feelings of our infirmities, with our pain, with our suffering, and with our hurt. In other words, he feels our pain, and he knows what it is to suffer. The Bible says he came to his own people. You think you're safe among your own people? We've got murals on the Shankill Road of people who were killed by those who were from the other side. What are we putting up murals of people who were killed by people in our own community? Maybe there wouldn't be enough wall space for those murals. Jesus knew what that was. He came to his own. These were his own people. They received him not. They rejected him. They expelled him. They put him out. We will not have this man to rule over us, they said. He knew what it was to be despised and rejected by men, as Isaiah said he would be. Despised and rejected. He knew what it was to be wounded. He knew what it was to be ridiculed, to be gossiped about, to be lied about. Yeah, these things happen to all of us. Jesus is touched with the feelings of our infirmities, with our pain and our hurts, because he's gone through it himself. He had friends who were killed. James, who followed him day by day, night after night. James and others were right there with Jesus. James was killed. John the Baptist, his cousin, beheaded. Jesus saw it, witnessed stuff was going on around him, experienced the same pain and the hurt that many of us experience in life. He was arrested and falsely accused. He was beaten and whipped to an inch of death, and then was finally crucified. Well, tell me Jesus doesn't understand what we're going through. I'll finish in a moment. All this shows that Jesus understands our hurt. But not only does he understand your hurt this morning, friends, I want to tell you that Jesus is the answer to your hurt. This is not just about, hey, we all hurt, let's all go home and just embrace it and enjoy it and get on with life regardless. That's not what it's about. This is saying there is an answer. Jesus does not just understand your hurt. He is the answer to your hurt. That's why he said, call upon me in the day of trouble and I will answer you. The day of hurt, the day of pain. That's why he said, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And sometimes that rest is not just an absence from the hurt and the pain. Sometimes it's rest and peace in the midst of the pain and the hurt. Some people think that peace is an absence of war. The word shalom we get the word peace from. I think Mark and Billy have it outside your door. The word shalom does not mean an absence of conflict. It does not mean an absence of war. It means experiencing and knowing peace even in the midst of the circumstances. It's having peace in the midst of all that you're going through. And that's what Jesus offers today. You see, Jesus knows what it is, knew what it was to hurt. And friends, I want to say as I'm finishing this message, hurt and pain do not have to win. Hurt does not have to win. Paul said we're hard-pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're not crushed. Here was a man who was lashed, who was whipped 117 lashes on his back. 117 marks on his back. A man who was stoned and literally left for dead. They thought they killed him. He was finally stoned to death, but not at that moment. And when faced with pain and death, Paul could cry out. This is what he says. He's facing all this pain. He's facing all this rejection. He's experiencing suffering and hurt. And yet this is what he cries out. He says, grave, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? If we were going through half the stuff that Paul went through, it would be, woe is me. Can't face another day. Can't face another night. Can't sleep tonight. We all understand those human feelings because we get through it and we all express those. But that was Paul's response. Grave, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? And just like the Jesus that Paul served, and the Jesus that Paul followed, when it seemed like hurt and pain had won, this is what Jesus cried out from the cross. He cried out, it is finished. He didn't say, I'm finished, I'm done, this is it, nothing more. It's not what he was saying to the people, I'm finished. No, he's saying, it is finished. I've done what I've come to do. The devil is the one who's finished. The devil is the one who's beaten. The devil is the one who's defeated. Hell has been vanquished. That's what Jesus was crying out from that cross. He accomplished what he came to do. And so for that reason, he understands what we go through as people. Worship team, please come to the platform. We're going to finish in a moment. We're going to do a dedication as well as we're finishing. I want to tell you, friends, no matter what you're going through, and some of you are going through some stuff. There's some of you in this place right now, and you lost a parent when you were a child. Some lost a parent under tragic circumstances. There are parents here, and you've lost children. Some never made it to birth, and you still carry the pain of that. You've lost children that were born, that experienced and enjoyed life for a short time. And yet, no matter what it is that you're going through, and in no way does this diminish the pain and the suffering that people have gone through and are going through right now. But I want to say to you today that in the midst of everything that we go through, his victory is our victory. His victory is your victory. You can walk away from that and leave it and just go and do your own thing and live under the shadow and the clouds of the suffering and the pain for the rest of your life. Or you can say, do you know what? There's hope in the midst of this, because there's hope for the hurting. And his victory will be my victory. His strength can be your strength today, dear friends. The strength that enabled him to face down every enemy, to face down every punch that was thrown at him, every spit that was put on his face, the nails that went through his hands, to give you the strength to go through the circumstances that you face. His strength can be your strength. His grace can be your grace. His life can be your life, because he came to give life. He came to give eternal life, but he also came to give the best of life. And friends, I want you to embrace that this morning. Embrace the best of life. Don't settle for second best as a non-Christian. Don't settle for plan B as a Christian, because there's a plan A for you. There's much more for you. There's much more for every person who puts the hand in the hand of Jesus than what we so often go for. And so many Christians are settling for less. There's much more for you, friends. There's hope for the hurting. And whatever you're going through today, I want to tell you, Jesus Christ is more than just a name in a sermon or a name in a song. He's a person. He comes to where you are. He comes into the midst of your circumstance and he says, I'm here for you and I'm here to help you. Let me help you.